Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's parent webinar presented by Kiro Learning Support in collaboration with Kiro Learning and Development. I'm Johan van Lille, and I'm part of the Kiro Learning and Development team. So this evening's topic is helping your child manage time, simple strategies for staying organized and focused. So tonight's webinar will explore practical, age-appropriate strategies to help your child stay organized and manage their time effectively. Our presenter tonight is Samantha Rotaro. She's an educational psychologist and the project manager of Kiro Learning Support. And Samantha has extensive experience supporting learners, parents, and teachers in navigating emotional and learning challenges. And she's passionate about equipping families with practical strategies to foster well-being and resilience. Samantha will introduce our expert speaker just now. Please feel free to ask questions during the webinar by posting them in the Q&A section of this webinar. So our presenters will address them either during the session or at the end. And with that, it's over to you, Samantha.
Evening, everybody. Thank you, Johan. So I want to welcome Shanae Conley. She is a social worker up in Gauteng, and she works with our Kiro Academy in Wilgehevel. Welcome, Shanae.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thanks for joining us this evening. It's always lovely to tap into the experts we have within our Kiro family and share with our parents and our learners and families so that we can all grow together. Tonight's topic, time management, helping your child to manage time. We're going to be discussing what it is. We're then going to be talking about how to create a home and a nurturing home to make space for helping to teach organization and providing strategies. And then we'll be talking through specifically primary school strategies and then moving on to specifically high school strategies. So we will cover the whole domain throughout the hour. So let's just first talk about why this topic. Why did we choose it? Why is time management so important? It's crucial because it provides structure for our learners. We've said it so many times that structure provides safety, security, which is the key to being able to feel organized, to feel safe, productive, and to be able to focus. If we can manage our time effectively and we can break tasks down into manageable parts and understand and know how to prioritize matters, we really do lower our stress and anxiety. So we've spoken before in previous webinars about the answer to anxiety being action. Taking action is about prioritizing, organizing, and breaking down tasks. And eventually, that wild roller coaster that we're all riding feels a little bit more manageable. So specifically, when we're talking about our families and our learners, time management really helps with increasing productivity. So it provides your child with a clear set plan and structure in which they feel safe and secure, and they're able to meet all the goals set for that time. Reduces stress because planning and action leads to lowered stress. Knowing what the demand is, understanding what the goals are, leads to less overwhelmed feelings and anxiousness. Supporting goal-directed behavior. So through helping our children understand prioritization and time management, we are helping them to learn skills that will help in the future to work towards goals. Promotes focus and creates accountability. And this is something that is very, very important in our days at the moment with all the gaming and all the quick answers and responses and impulsive responses that we are dealing with. Creating opportunities for accountability by sticking to time structures, by sticking to goals, really does aid our children in their development. So I think that we want to start, Shanae, by just chatting a little bit about a supportive home environment. So what does a supportive home environment look like, and how does it impact confidence, build self-esteem, and nurture independence?
Thanks, Sam. Good evening, everyone. So nurturing and supportive homes and families and parents, really what we want to see is emotional support towards your child, no matter the age. This fosters open communication, and we want to reinforce positive behaviors as well. So not only does this foster problem-solving abilities in the school environment, but also in the social space as well. and also creates psychological competence. Establishing routines and boundaries, as you've mentioned, provides the structure where this teaching and learning can happen. And I always say encourage what works, give positive feedback as well. Don't just be negative and focus on what needs to happen. I think learners, again, various ages, need to get that positive feedback and have time to reflect on what has worked, what hasn't worked. But really, I think setting clear boundaries in the home, encouraging age-appropriate tasks, and again, praising what has been done well, and role modeling. We also have to role model to a certain extent in order for them to know what is expected. And again, what sort of aligns with our family rules. Yeah, and just creating a safe space, as you've mentioned.
Also, sometimes feel like, if I'm from a parent's perspective, when there's a structure in the home and we come through that door, and we always seem to come through with a whirlwind, don't we? It's all the bags and it's all the bits and bobs from the car. I find that a structure really supports me as a mom and parent as well, because instead of having to think on my feet and quickly motivate homework and motivate unpacking the bags and motivate, I can actually be reliant on the structure and boundaries that I've put in place over time. And it's just a little bit easier for you as a parent, because you don't have to do all that shouting and screaming when everyone is in that set structure. And more focus and energy can go to the nurturing, to the positivity, to the motivation, rather than fighting, oh, we better do homework, we better. But if there's a set structure, it really helps everybody. Do you find that with your girls as well?
Yes, I have one girl, one boy. And yeah, I can totally see that with my own children. That the routine really helps structure our day, whether it's when we're leaving in the morning for school, whether we're getting home. And it is very stressful. I'm a working mom, so getting home, having to cook, do homework, all of those tasks can feel very overwhelming. But again, having the rules and the routines really helps. And I think, again, if we scaffold, and if we role model, and if we give enough support, soon they start to get into the routine all on their own without me having to say, hey, what's the time now? What's the activity that needs to happen next? So that predictability as well is really important for them. So yes, absolutely, in my own home, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. I always sort of take a breath when we walk in, and I think, am I going to have to remind them? And then things happen. I think, oh, yes. Didn't shout that time. So we can see how valuable it is to be organized and to provide the structure for our families and to bring it into our homes and create these nurturing environments. So when we look at our children, time management is something that we need to look at from very little all the way through to our matric learner. And I want to just take a moment to discuss ages. So we had our last webinar was about different age groups and how your relationship changes through the years as your child develops. And when we're talking about time management and organization, we have to also remember where our child is developmentally. So the processes change as they grow. For a grade R learner, supper is going to not always be with the family, because they might have to eat earlier and go to bed earlier. So their routine is slightly different. You're going to be working in stories and that kind of thing. It's very much more role modeled, and you need to do it collaboratively and together with that age group. Whereas when we look at our maybe intermediate phase learners, grade 4, 5 learners, they're a little bit more independent, and you can provide the structure, provide frameworks, and just motivate and guide, mentor that they follow the systems. Whereas obviously with a high school learner, you're hoping that those strategies are in place and you begin to see them use it more independently. They maybe start drawing up their own structures and their own systems and lists and goals, which is the ideal. So I think it's always very, very valuable when we look at a broad topic such as this one, that we understand that we're also looking at the different age groups and what impact that has on the relationship and the expectation.
Absolutely.
Okay, I see there's a question, so let's quickly address that before we move on to practical strategies. The question states, what is meant by having a fixed structure? And I wonder if you could broaden on that for us, Shanae.
Yeah, so I think the fixed structure is having, the routine with expectations, with boundaries, but also within that being flexible enough to make adaptations where that's needed. I think like Sam was saying now, if we use a grade R learner, so supper is, let's say, at 7 o'clock, but with different ages, there'll be different expectations or different sort of rules, I want to say. And again, I think it needs to be age appropriate. So yes, having the fixed structure in terms of what is allowed, what's not allowed, what we do, what we don't do. But then having flexibility within that, because you may have a 13-year-old and a 7-year-old, and the way you implement those rules and routines may look very different.
That's right. So the structure really just sets expectation and helps with the boundaries, which is wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what the strategies are that we are talking about. So time management, organization is such a broad topic. So I'm going to go into the primary school, the younger learner, and then Shanae, you're going to carry on with the older learner for us, the high school learner.
So.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and then we're going to talk a little bit through those primary school tools. Sorry, I technically missed the PowerPoint there, but I will pull it up in a moment. Sorry, I can't seem to share it right now, but let's talk about some of the primary school strategies that we are talking about. So the first that we spoke about was to create a daily schedule. And this is very much about being very specific about what to do when. So we'll have things like come in the door, place your suitcases by the kitchen, unpack your lunchbox. With a younger learner, it's going to be really using specific language to create the routine and make it as understandable and as accessible as possible. So using visuals really helps a lot when you have pictures of what is expected, but also to take the time to discuss why we do it so that there's an understanding. You know, many of us don't have wonderfully placid and accommodating children that just do as we say always. And sometimes they need to understand the reasons why we're expecting that kind of routine and regulation. So a discussion about we need to unpack our lunch boxes so that we don't forget to pack fresh lunch in the morning. We need to put our school uniform in the washing machine so that we can have a clean uniform in the morning. And then we need to do homework because we're going to be really tired after supper. Those kind of discussions are important. We often, with our younger learners, tend to just want to put up a nice flashy routine. This is what we're going to do. And we forget that they actually also need to understand why I need to do it. What is the expectation behind it? Because the younger learner, I would say from grade 2 to 5, they have an incredible imagination. And it sometimes runs away with them. And often when you say to them, make sure to put your clothes in the washing machine after you've put your lunch in the kitchen, they really always want to please. But if there isn't a visual or an understanding of why, it's often can be quite overwhelming for them, even though it seems so basic for us. Then when we're talking about setting priorities and goals, we're talking about things like prioritizing what is important and what can be left for later. So we want to teach those skills of, well, your test is on Wednesday, but your spelling words are due tomorrow. So where are we going to start? We're going to start with our spelling words, and then we're going to work on. So we want to teach and model the idea of prioritizing. And when it comes to the intermediate phase learner and they have to start summarizing, this is a lovely life skill to add into summarizing, because you want to, if you've been using what is prioritizing, you've been using what is important, you can then slide that into what is important about this particular writing piece or story, and how can we summarize it. So these life skills really do follow throughout learning in all sorts of ways. Using timers or alarms is a really, really practical and tactile way of setting routine and structure. And we want to always make sure that we have 20 to 25 minutes of actual work and engagement with 5 minutes break and then back again. It's important that when we are planning these structures and when we are deciding how we want our routine to look, how we want to equip our children, that we also take rest into consideration. They cannot sit for hours. They need to take those breaks. And if by setting an alarm for it, you're teaching them the idea of it's okay to plan for my needs. It's okay to plan for breaks. Having good areas to work in, specific areas to work in. I read an article the other day where a gentleman was discussing studying and how, as a student, he would teach himself to always study with his desk lamp on. So, students live in res and they have one desk and they have one bed. And he made it a priority that whenever he sat down to actually engage in learning, he put on the desk lamp. And so his whole body and routine got used to the fact that when the desk lamp is on, I'm concentrating and I'm engaged. When the desk lamp is off, I'm on a break and I'm relaxed and I'm drinking my coffee at my table, or I'm reading a book for fun. And over time, it became so much easier for him to focus and engage when he turned that desk lamp on. So create something for your child where you've got an egg timer or a visual of them studying, or perhaps there's something fun that they enjoy that you put up, and this is our study time. When this is up, we are working. When this goes, it's break time. It always helps to just get them into that position of learning and studying. Then, of course, to help to limit distractions, teaching, planning, and organizing. Teach how to use a planner and a calendar. For the younger learner, you're only going to be planning perhaps 1 week at a time, have only week calendars up, and work through just what's happening this week, not too much at a time. Otherwise, it becomes very overwhelming. When we look at modeling good time management, try, and I know this is really, really difficult as a parent because I'm always rushing from one thing to the next, but there are times when we try to model good time management, where you see how much we got done in this time, look how amazing that was, let's reward ourselves with an ice cream or something like that. And then very, very importantly, to use motivation for your children, to help them to learn that using these skills is positive. Using these skills really does assist in making sure that they can manage these tasks that come their way and all this high expectation that comes their way. Shanae, would you like to add on to that for high school learners specifically? How does this look different in the high school world?
Yeah. I think, Sam, let me start by saying that, as I alluded to earlier, if we scaffold these And when I say scaffold, I want you to sort of think of a literal building, with construction sites and all of that. And we have the scaffolding to support while we are building this spectacular masterpiece at the end of it all. And I think that's what I really want to focus on for a moment, because I think if parents can foster that in, let's say, from grade going into grade 4, because we know that grade 3 to grade 4 transition can be quite difficult, even the grade 7 perhaps to grade 8 transition. And if there's enough support, and again modeling and scaffolding at that age, when it gets to grade 8, 9, 10, all the way to matric, it will be a lot easier to manage these sort of skills, to implement these skills and tasks a lot more independently. So a lot of, I think, what you've shared is, I want to echo that. So for example, the daily schedules, I think that is absolutely amazing. And look, we have timetables to structure our day, so what lesson we're going to, but the daily schedule can also track what happens after school. So when I get home, what extramurals am I going to be doing, or how much time am I going to spend on homework? How much time am I going to spend playing soccer or going to the gym? Because we also need to integrate the rest time, the playtime, the downtime. And with the daily schedule, I think then weekly, and with the more senior learners, definitely a monthly schedule, because there you can plot a little bit more. You can get a sense of what tasks are due when, and really just break that down into more manageable sort of pieces. I think time is also really important, something that you've mentioned. So using a timer to start an activity and end an activity. But also, I want to encourage working with a timer when they are doing certain tasks, particularly if it's a mock exam or a test that they're preparing for, because learning to manage your time within a limited, let's say, hour or two, can really help them also set up the pace for when they are writing. Because I think if they're doing it on their own at home, it's a lot more relaxed. So it takes me 2.5 hours to do a 2-hour math paper. And when I get to the exam, I'm actually stressing because now I'm not used to working at the pace that I should be. Checklists. I absolutely love checklists. I have lists for lists. But I think checklists are really important. So again, write down what is working, what needs to happen, tick that off, move on to the next task. And I think it really also creates a sense of accomplishment. And, I've done this for the day and I feel proud and I can celebrate that and then move to the next thing.
I think that's so important, because when we talk about reward and goal directed behavior, we always think we're looking at a sweetie or a prize, or, that is all good and well when we're teaching what that feels like. But as the child gets older, we want that to become intrinsic, and we want them to feel like, wow, I attained this, I did that, which is really, really amazing and really helps them to feel that feeling of accomplishment, like you said.
Yeah.
So when we are just jumping quickly into a question we had, because it relates very much here when we're talking about schedule, and that is, how do I balance sport and studying for my child? How do I equip my child to balance that? And I think that is very important, especially for, our primary school learners are very, very busy, but but high school so much more.
Yes.
How do we reach that balance?
Yeah. Again, I think if it's integrated into the plan and it doesn't come as a surprise that I now have a soccer game and then I've got a soccer match in this day, it can really be managed well.
Yeah.
So I think it's about going to school, having your after school routine. Perhaps it's extramurals on a weekend. I think as long as it feels manageable for you as the parent and for the learner, that's important. And get feedback from them, ask them, does this feel like it's too much? You seem like you're really stressed. Are you coping with all the pressure? Do you think we maybe need to drop one sport and do two instead of three or four? Because I know teens also want to do a lot. They want to be involved in everything, especially if you are an athletic sort of person,
That's the
or
thing.
even culturally. So there is a lot also that schools offer that you want to be part of. But I think it's about allowing them, especially at that age, where they can reflect and give feedback and go, Actually, mom, dad, I think I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I think I need to cut down on one activity because somewhere something's lacking. Either I'm not having enough family time or I'm not having enough time to complete my homework. So I think having the discussions about what works and what feels right for them is really important.
I think that's so true, and you understand that obviously from a social work perspective. I think it's really important that we as the adults, regardless of the age of the child, whether they are 16 or they are 10, that we promote those conversations, because the
Mm-hmm.
children are living in a culture of the more I do,
Yes.
the better I am. And they feel as if they are weak, or they can't manage just because they need to drop
Mm-hmm.
or do less. And obviously that is not the case, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not able to have those conversations. They don't feel empowered to have those conversations unless we as parents open that conversation for our child, because they really
Yes.
need to learn and understand that it's okay to speak up and say, you know what, I'm not getting
Mm-hmm.
to everything. Can we
Mm-hmm.
look at slowing things down? Can we look at changing things? um,
Absolutely.
it's really something as a parent that we need to remember to
Mm.
to do for our children and to help our children. Shanae, I'm going to
Yes.
share your list of high school tools with the
Sure.
the team, so we can just with the parents, so they can have a look and have a visual of what you are referring
Yeah.
to. Can you see it on the screen?
Yes.
Great.
Thanks. I think I've spoken through most of them. I want to just spend a moment on the reverse planning for a second, and then I'll ask you, Sam, just to jump to the next slide. Um, I think this is a tool that I learned a little later in my schooling, and I always say to learners that I see at school, if I had known this, I would have been such a better planner. Because I think in our mind we plan forward, right? So we go, I have a test on Wednesday, so I need to study on Tuesday and just wing it and hopefully I get through everything. But we really don't want to. I have this conversation with my high school learners all the time. But we don't want to get into that panic studying, just again winging it. We want to be able to plan, and again maybe over a month where we. So this is a really nice visual.
Mm.
And I think if we use exams as an example, where we look at when is the exam date and we plot that on a monthly calendar. So let's say it's the 26th of June. And now I'm going to work backwards. So that is my end goal. By the 26th of June, I need to have completed all my history notes, make sure that I understand everything that I've now made notes on, do a practice test, do some revision, and then take my exam. But if we just look towards that test, it feels very overwhelming because now you've got 7 subjects, some are 2 papers each, um, 2 weeks to study, and you're going, how am I going to fit all of this in? So again, I think plotting it on a monthly planner or a calendar, and then really working back to try and create these little steps to how to get to that bigger goal is really important. And this is something I implement with a lot of the matric learners that I see, with a lot of the high school learners that I see. And I really find it effective because they also not just planning, they are implementing. So my rule is it's easy to put the plan together. It's the execution and it's the doing it. But again, I think if parents are involved in this, in helping them structure this a little bit more, if you find that that is not the biggest skill, and sharing it in a place that is perhaps a more common space like the fridge. I often say, put your plan up on the fridge so that mom can just check in and say, hey, I see you've got a math test in 2 days. How's it going? Have you been studying? I see that you were supposed to do revision on this day. Is there anything I can help with? And then we have, you know, uh, very stressful weeks and we have less stressful weeks. So again, just learning how to be flexible within that. So you may have a plan and a structure, But when things feel a little less stressed, do I have time to maybe do a little bit more fun activities, maybe some self-care, maybe something that I didn't get to, before. And in the more hectic weeks, how am I going to cope with that? Do I have enough strategies in place to manage the week? And then again, just asking for help, saying, oh, mom, I just have so much going on. Or dad, I really need help trying to think this through. Can you assist me in breaking this down? So sometimes just sitting and sharing this plan with someone can really make a difference. And I find collaborating again, even with the older learners, can really strengthen those skills.
I think we often lose sight of that. It's something that I do as well, that I forget that my boys are still children. And we've we've planned and we've organized and they've got all their visuals, they know what they're supposed to be doing, but actually implementing it can be so overwhelming. And like you said, it's so important to have that shared so that we can just check in as the parents, just check
Yeah.
in, make sure that they are managing those routines we've put in place.
Absolutely. And I think like for everyone, I mean, I think of myself in the workspace. Like I said, I have calendars and then I have daily planners and I have checklists and I have lists for lists. But I find that that works because I can tick off something and I can get to the next task and I feel that I've accomplished this, and it really helps me think. But I think more than that, there needs to be the reflection that I spoke about earlier
Yes.
about what is working. And if it's not working, if I find that I'm still not getting to everything that I planned this week, what needs to be reviewed? Or changed, or what do we need to shift? And maybe this speaks to the question earlier about how do we manage that balance? How do we find the
Yes.
balance? So I
Mm.
think having it, even the extramurals, put it in a schedule. I've got one in my fridge with my children's schedule, and everyone knows what they have to do, when, what time we have to leave here to get to the next activity. And it's a shared thing because again, it's a shared responsibility. So again, I think with your learners, with your children, get them to reflect on what is working, and if it's not, how do we review that? Because it's not going to be a seamless process.
Exactly. It's not going to be seamless. And even as the parent, sometimes you also need to put things on the side. But I often get, when we have these discussions with parents, I often get the question, well, shouldn't I just stop all sport? And I'm always sort of so against that because, you know, depending on your child, some children are academically strong, some are culturally strong, some are strong on the sports field. But the
Mm-hmm.
important thing is that they have that release, that physical release. And it's never an option to skip practice because of a project, or to skip practice because of a test or exam, or to skip walking the dog because of the
Mm-hmm.
test or exam. I think that is such a crucial part that needs to be worked into your schedule. That's part of the break, because
Mm-hmm.
physical activity really helps the system
Mm-hmm.
more than we realize. Not only to regulate sensory, to regulate emotional system,
Mm-hmm.
but to also get the brain up and running again and awake and ready to
Yeah.
focus for the next session.
Yeah.
So it's
Absolutely.
really important. It's okay to
Yeah.
maybe you need to cut down on practices or you need to cut down on
Mm.
attendance, but definitely not to take
Mm.
it out at all.
Yeah. And I
Shanae,
think, Sam, what you
hmm, hmm,
if I can just add, I think what you've
yeah,
mentioned, just I often think about high achieving learners and students and children. And I think there's often this guilt when they have the downtime and when they take that break, they're going, no, but I can't. I need to get back to studying because I'm not doing enough, and then I'm not going to get through everything. Um, but if there isn't, again, this planning and having the
mm,
consistent breaks and regulating our bodies, our brains, it can result in burnout. And I think,
yeah,
again, it's about teaching them that having a break is not bad. You don't have to feel guilty for that. So I'm not saying Netflix and chill for 5 hours,
no,
but working it into a schedule. So working consistently, then having a break, working, having the break. And I think parents also need to encourage that, because I've got learners who, again, I've seen over time,
Mm.
very high performing learners, and they are just petrified of not doing enough because they feel that they're not going to reach those goals. So again, setting goals, planning with them and going, what is feasible, what is manageable? And again, then finding that balance between taking time out, whatever that looks like, and then, doing the work.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important notes. I just want to ask you, when it comes to reverse planning, it is crucial, and I use it with my children as well, especially when we enter into a test series or an exam time.
Mm-hmm.
When you are reverse planning so you've got a test series upcoming and it's 2 weeks and we're writing a subject every day. And we now reverse plan to be able to prepare for all of those subjects. How many times do you think we need to get to a specific subject? For example, if I'm writing EMS on Wednesday and I'm writing maths on Thursday, to reverse plan, I think it's important that people understand that reverse plan takes you 2, 3, 4 weeks before that test series begins.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's hard to put a number on it.
Yes.
One, because there's different subjects, there's different
ages and
of
grades.
learners.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and also different amounts of content, So I think with I'm trying to think of something, let's say with life orientation, that maybe is a little less content heavy, let's say, and it's maybe an easier subject for your child and they feel quite confident doing it. So again, the planning needs to be there, but I think the amount of time and energy spent doing like an LO study or prep may be very different from, for example, math and physics. So I also think you have to look at what are the volumes of the work and allocate enough time to get through the different sections. So if it's 6 chapters, then maybe it's a chapter a week if I need to cover every single subject in that week. And I think this is where it gets a little bit tricky because the planning takes so much time, because you literally have to go, okay, so it's all of this work. How am I going to break it up into these different sections? Cover all of that, make notes, then have time to review, then have time to do a practical, then go and write my paper. So you can see that it isn't something we can just do in a couple of days or even a week. And that's why I encourage the monthly planner or the maybe FET. They usually get the termly planner where they can really see where the assessments are, how much time in between, they've got to plan. And again, making the notes, having separate files for the different subjects, just really creating some organization around that.
Yeah. But
it is not something you can do in a day.
No. I always say with the older learners that making an effort to plan from the beginning of the term, to pay attention to summarizing notes for every subject in the week. So each subject has a day of the week, and whether I have homework or not, I'm still going to take 20 minutes out of my day to just summarize up to where I'm at in that topic. Just to stay on top of it. Because then as you get closer to the exam or the test series, you end up having less and less work to cover at the end of the day. But planning
and not and not neglecting homework, because I think sometimes we go, I'm not going to do the homework, I'm just going to focus on my studies because I'm writing in 2 days. But actually, homework is part of the revision. It's part of the planning. So to also get them to see that and to sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Just to rethink what homework is. It's not just this tedious task that I'm doing, but it's actually me reinforcing things that I've learned throughout the day, which can then help your planning and your studying as well.
Exactly. Yeah. It's important to have a mind shift for the children around homework.
Absolutely.
But again, that comes from us as the adults in that space.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I just quickly want to go back to the younger learners. So to summarize, for all learners, actually, these 9 points we've spoken about throughout the age groups: to work with daily schedules, to set priorities and goals, to use a timer. We've spoken about alarms, and timers can be lots of fun. There's lots of variations. There's so many online timers where what's those things explode, and balloons pop out, and there's glitter, and there's lots of fun different kinds of timers. I always love a sand timer. It's so calming, and it just flows, and it really helps the learners to stay present. Study areas, limiting distractions, teaching planning. It's collaborative. Walk me through it so that I understand it. Encouraging breaks, model good time management, and then to practice patience and praise efforts. One little thing that I just want to mention, and that's teaching first and then thinking. So I'm going to do this first, and then I'm going to do that. So a lot of the times with the younger learners, they want to come home and they want to game, or they want to go swim, or they want to, there's always something else they want to do other than. And to get them into the idea of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do what needs to be done, and then I'm going to do the fun stuff. And it's something that can really see them through life, that skill of being able to, let me get this done, then I'm going to do that this first, and then thinking. And then I just quickly want to show parents 2 minutes on a routine chart and reward charts. We've spoken about using them, but it's very important to understand just how specific they need to be. So often when we think about a morning routine, we think it's going to be good enough to just sort of write, wake up, eat breakfast, get in the car. But when we are teaching it with the younger learner, we need to be extremely specific. It needs to be engaging. So this one is, for example, a tick-off chart. There's many different kind of variations. But with the younger learner, we need to be very, very specific. As they get older, obviously there needs to be less detail when they understand it and get used to using it. When we're using things like reward charts, we need to be very specific. Again, start with very specific detail. So if my child is perhaps in grade 1 and they're struggling with starting and completing a task, I'm only going to have 1 or 2 things that I'm working on. So maybe I started my task and ended it, and I had good manners. Only 2 simple elements at a time, not to make them too overwhelming. And then you'll see on this particular reward chart, there's only 3 times that needs to be done, and then they are rewarded with a sticker. So short, younger learners, short time. So they get their reward within 2 to 3 times of exercising it, of using the skill, of showing the value system, of practicing the ethicals and the values that you want to bring to them, and then we reward. So it's just important to understand that when we speak about these things, that they are really age appropriate, starting from extremely literal, very detailed, and then they grow less detailed. They're just sort of reminders for the older learners as we continue and they get older. So I'm going to check the questions, make sure that we answer. If there are any questions you'd like us to ask, please post them in the Q&A so that we can see them and we can address them for you. I'm going to look through some of the questions now. So besides using a timer to practice at home, how else does the school support a child that is unable to complete the allocated tasks? So this is at school. How can we help the children? It comes with time, and it's very important to understand why the child is not able to complete their tasks in school. That is really important to have a discussion with the teacher and to understand what is it that is causing them to not complete their tasks at school. Help the teacher, let them bring a timer in, let them try and help the child to organize themselves better. But sometimes it's about understanding the reason. Is it because they are forgetting what they're supposed to be doing? Is there too many instructions given at a certain time? Are they struggling with the task itself? Is it a particular subject? There's so many different aspects to that we need to really have those conversations directly with the teacher to understand why it's happening. So if you find that your child is coming home with lots of homework because they didn't complete it in class, please make sure that you speak to your teacher as soon as possible and to get to the root of why is that happening. And then we can start with the intervention plan to help and see what done about it.
Mm-hmm.
Another question we have is, how do we plan if the demarcations are sent late or critical information is only shared a week before the test? This is a very common gripe.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a
I
quick
think,
answer, and then you can give your opinion, Shanae.
okay.
But I think it's very important as parents that we stay engaged and understand what our children are learning. And with Kiro, we use the Teams platform, check in. Even if you know you've been given an assessment calendar and you know it's coming up, but you haven't received a specific demarcation, start to go through the work that has been covered and start having discussions around the work that has been covered so that you know your child is prepared for what may be coming. And then always reach out to the school. Reach out directly and tell them that you are struggling with the time between being given the demarcation and being ready to write the test. Shanae, do you want to add there?
Yes, I think it's also about, again, if we have this reverse planning and we are summarizing every day and we have these little tasks that we're working towards the exam, the demarcations, yes, I know that they are important, but if we're covering content, we should be okay. But I think the other thing is that often learners get the demarcations and they go, okay, I'm only going to study this. I'm only going to study this. And they sort of check that and then they forget or they don't focus on the other, important information that has been shared. So as much as I understand the need for the demarcations, I would say still plan, go over all the content. I know when it gets to the end of the year, it is quite a lot. So again, reach out to the school, as Sam was saying, but encourage the planning, the summarizing right from the onset to avoid that.
Yeah, that's very valuable. Then the last question we have for now is, will the presentation be shared? So all our presentations are uploaded onto the Kiro Learning and Support YouTube channel. So you can go back and rewatch any of our presentations over the last year or 2 years, I think now. So yes, you can find it on the YouTube channel, the Learning and Support, Kiro Learning and Support YouTube channel. Then for future talks, can you discuss time management within the test itself? Certainly, thank you very much for that. I'll definitely make a note for us to look at how can we help our learners to manage actual time within a test and test taking. To finish off, Shanae, would you like to give us a little bit of inspiration for the parents to keep up the good fight when it comes to trying to implement and trying to teach these skills? Give us some hope, Shanae. Does it get better?
No, it absolutely does. Look, my kids are still little, and I use reward charts. I use star charts, and it really works. And even just the positive reinforcement, the acknowledging when something has been done well, and for the older ones as well. I mean, they don't stop. Or what's what I'm looking for? They don't get used to hearing you've done well done, or they love that. So I think really just giving that feedback and just really creating spaces to check in and going, how can I help? Sometimes that's all we need to ask is there anything I can do to help? Yeah, I was going to say managing digital distractions as well, because it's something I didn't mention earlier, but I'm not going to go there. I think it's a whole discussion for another day. But yeah, I think just positive feedback and reinforcement as well.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of information we've shared and a lot of tips that can be used. But at the end of the day, you need to do what works for you and your child. What's extremely important is to see your child. That is the biggest thing. And those check-ins, as Shanae has said repeatedly this evening, make sure that we open those discussions with our learners, because none of this is going to work if there's emotional distress or there's emotional anxiety, high anxiety. All of these things are there to help prevent us getting there. But if we don't have the discussions around checking in, making it okay to have stumbling blocks, making it all right to struggle, making it okay to discuss it and be open, really does make a difference for our children at the end of the day. So open communication, I think, is very, very important. Setting those goals, realistic goals. I think, often we want to say, okay, let's work towards 80%. But if your child has never attained 80% in something, then it's most likely that is a goal that is beyond their reach. And we need to first get 60% before we can try and get 65. Then before we go for the 70 and then. So really start small, attainable goals. Attainable goals really help to motivate that intrinsic motivation that we want. We want that internal, oh, this feels good. When I do it, it feels good. You know, as they move from very egocentric young little ones and they start to develop and they start to realize, oh, it's I can do good for me, not just for other people. And then they start to see how good it feels. But it's our journey as parents to teach them that and support that development and provide opportunities to learn and feel how good it feels to do well and to reach goals. So thank you very, very much. Any last words, Shanae?
I think parents do amazing work and they don't get enough credit. So well done for just sticking through all of these difficult times with your learners, with your children, because when they are at school, we are at school, and when they write matric, we write matric. So yes, it's not always easy, there are challenges, but the support is really important. So thank you for all that you do as the parent.
Yes, thank you very much, parents. Remember to take care of yourself as well. We can't do all of this if we're not looking after ourselves. And we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time again. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Shanae. It was lovely to have you with us. We'll definitely have fun.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye-bye.
Bye.